Hello, my name is John Sims, and I'm here to show my prototype of my Unity project called Raising Cities. So I don't have any GUI set up for this project yet, so I have everything set to keybinds. But if you just click and hold it down, you can position a building anywhere you want, and if you press space while holding on to the building, you can change the rotation. Um, you can There's 4 different buildings set up to 1, 2, 3, and 4. This would be the second one. This would be the third. And this would be the fourth. You can move around using the WASD, and if you hold the third wheel down, or the third mouse button, or the scroll button, you can move with the mouse in order to move around the screen. I also have it set up so that if you right click a building and then you've selected the building. I'll be able to do more with this in the future, but right now I just have it so that if you press space, you can delete the building. So if I want to delete this middle one right here, I can delete that one, and if I want to delete the one on the right, right click and space, and so on. So the scripts I have for this are the first one, camera control, which allows the camera to this code allows the camera to, oh wait, hold on. This code allows the camera to rotate. Oh, it's doing stuff. Alright. This code allows the camera to rotate whenever you hold down the third mouse button or the scroll wheel. You can then move depending on where your mouse is. It'll change the rotation of the camera, and this code moves the mouse depending on your WASD position. The next script I have is the create new building script, which has a couple serialized fields to insert prefabs. In the main core of it, in the update function, it identifies the building type that you've pressed. Like the input get key down over here will set the building type to the number you've pressed, basically the building that corresponds with it, and this sets everything else to the same things, which I can optimize that by putting it with the same things. But I did this, this is the first thing I wrote. So, alright. The next function is get mouse button down, and it detects whenever you clicked it. And so at first when you click it, this function goes off, and it'll only happen if you're not still placing building. And so what it does is it makes you start placing, so by setting placing to true, and it casts away from the camera to where the mouse position is, and then it creates a new prefab of the current building that you're on, which is set from the building type that you selected with the numbers, and then it puts that building at the position of the raycast hits. Well, a little bit above the position, because if it didn't, it'd spawn inside the floor, and that didn't do too well. So if you're still in placing mode, it'll always draw another ray cast from the camera to the mouse position in order to figure out where to put the building at. So if you're still holding it down, it'll do that. If you release the key by the get mouse button up, then it stops placing, so this will no longer run. It will give the building a box collider, which is off until you stop placing, because the box collider interferes with the raycast, and it'll make the building slowly get closer and closer towards you as it hits the building. If you press this is so that if you press space while you're placing the building, it'll change the angle that the building is at. And this last one is for if you right click it, it sends a ray, and where the ray hits, it will send it'll start a function in another class called select building, sending over the hit point vector. In the other class, what it does with that vector is it selects, it takes the x of that vector, and the z is that, because that's what's necessary. It goes through all. Alright, so this class has a bunch of lists for a list of references to the building, a list of the building types, and a list of where the x is, the first x of the building is in the second x, and the first z of the building in the second z, in order to tell where how the building is in the coordinate plane. And so this function goes through each element in the lists and checks in case if the raycast hit one of the buildings. And if it does, then it sets the underscore building variable to equal that specific building reference. From there, you can destroy that building when you press space. This add building function is called back in here, and the get mouse button up. So when you're done placing the building, it sends over the building type, reference to the building, and the angle. So it takes the building type and adds it to the list. It also takes the building reference and adds it to the list. And depending on the type of building, it's gonna have a different size on the x, and it's gonna be different lengths on the x and z axis. And so it determines what type it is and sets the x breadth and z breadth accordingly, and it divides that by 2 and subtracts that from the general position of the building transform position x, and it also adds that to get the end x, and it does the same thing for z. The start z is half of the z breadth. You take that away from the position of the z, and then the opposite for end of the z. And that this is to populate this function populates these lists that I can then use for the select building function. What I don't really like this too much. It's a little overcomplicated, and I'm going to turn it into a grid, similar to like how you see this here. It'd be like you can place a building on one square or move it to the next square, and it'd snap to each space. Maybe some buildings would take 2 squares, but for now that's the prototype I have. It's pretty simple, but it works, and it shows the building editor in action. Thank you for watching, and I'd appreciate any feedback.